We're going back to basics because food is expensive, and this is the story of all the sandwiches. One of my favorite things about food is how it impacts life. I didn't know that when I was eating Nicole's leftover turkey that would be the only turkey I'd want to use for the rest of my life. I didn't know that the time I went to Fair Play with my Uncle Steve is the reason why I know that I use only Land O'Lakes American cheese. And I didn't know that while I am making a simple meal for my children to eat, this idea of even making a sub sandwich wasn't something that I was familiar with until I was living with my dad and stepmom. Back in the 90s, there weren't a lot of sandwich shops I went to. Subway was still relatively new. The best sandwich that I remember having was from a tiny little shop called Midway in Pilsen on 18 Levitt, and they made their sandwiches with white bread. But for whatever reason, the kinds of sandwiches that I typically had as a child were usually those Oscar Mayer variety packs of meat that still taste like salami, even if you were using turkey. And as much as it's incredibly nostalgic now, I don't think I was that fond of them back then. At the tail end of 14 and into the early months of 15, I lived with my father and his family. And while I grew up an only child, during that short season, I found myself in a family of 6. To say it was a culture shock would be an understatement. But I do still think it was incredibly fascinating to see how 2 parents lived in a household with a bunch of kids, and somehow my stepmom was still the one doing all the work, even though both she and my dad had jobs. For all the different things that I learned during that season, there were foods that I was introduced to that I'd never heard of or had before. My stepmom is Filipina, and I still miss nilaga. I remember her trying to feed me some Encore veal that I had no interest in eating. But the thing that reminds me of my stepmother the most is the sub sandwich. Now, I have no idea what was on that sandwich. And I almost think that she is a reason why I use this submarine dressing. I think my biggest takeaway is that despite the circumstances, I could still tell it was made with love. And I think that's the whole point. So whether you're using Crocus ham or Sara Lee honey roasted turkey breast, I hope you're well fed. Now go find some French bread. We have meals to make.